Welcome to another edition of What Really Matters, as Charlie Gerow is running for governor right now. But we wanted to talk about what really matters to you. Last week was about conversation. This week it's about something entirely different, choices. And in the last couple of years, with COVID pandemic and everything else being thrown around, from jobs being lost to businesses going down the drain, choices have become a very big word. But one of the things that we had a chance to see last night on PCN was a chance to make your first look at some choices for the Republican nomination for governor of Pennsylvania. You were on that stage last night, my friend. Your take from what happened last evening. I know initially it was something you worried about maybe being a snooze fest, but it worked out pretty well. Talk a little bit about last night's initial debate.
Yeah, it really did. The organizers did a really good job, Gary, of letting people see their choices, and there's a wide variety and array of choices on the Republican side, which I think is a good thing. I think competition will let the cream rise to the top. It'll produce the best candidate to go against Josh Shapiro in the fall. And I thought last night was really well done. It's tough when you've got that many candidates to make something flow smoothly, let people see what each candidate brings to the table. But I thought it was a good night. I was really happy with the way I did last night. I thought our message connected with people, not only in the audience, but across the television screens of people throughout Pennsylvania.
And I know there were 13 people on the stage last night. A couple candidates chose not to come. And you think maybe you missed out on an opportunity if you don't get on that stage and give the people of Pennsylvania a chance to see everybody out there at one time.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Barletta didn't call me and ask me for my advice, but if he had, I'd have said, you really, really, really ought to go. I think that not going to those debates is a statement that doesn't work well for most people. And I think that, you make a mistake by not showing up. But most of the candidates showed up. Only two weren't there. And I think that it really, really was a great night for the people of Pennsylvania, because they got, for the first time, to see these candidates up close and personal and got a chance to kind of get a sense of who they are. There weren't a lot of opportunities to go into great policy pronouncements and long-winded speeches, but I think people really got a sense of the meat and character of the candidates.
You know what it came down to, though, as I watched it last night, this idea of choices. And over the last 2 years, we've talked a lot here, I think, in Pennsylvania and around the country, but Pennsylvania is what we're concerned with right here, about who makes the choices. We make choices every day in our own families, and we decide budgets, and we decide what we're going to do with the monies that we have, and they're finite. But in Pennsylvania, it seems like we're making decisions with infinite amounts of money that Pennsylvanians don't really have. We're wondering why we're in debt in certain places. We're wondering why we're losing jobs. And we're looking at some of the decisions that are made and some of the choices that are made and wondering where are the consequences for those in the long run. Talk a little bit about that, if you would.
Well, I think the pandemic, Gary, really pointed up the distinction in philosophy and how that philosophy works out in real life between the Tom Wolfe, Josh Shapiro model and the model of most Pennsylvanians. They are of the far left that believes that, life is kind of a series of problems to be solved by big government and bureaucrats and so-called experts, and that the rest of us really can't make those choices for ourselves. Whereas we believe that people should be given the opportunity to make the best choices for themselves. And so instead of these arbitrary and capricious lockdowns and mandates that kept us shuttered in our homes and our businesses locked down and our kids out of school, we should have adopted what I said last night on the debate stage, a model much more similar to what Ron DeSantis did in Florida, because as a result of just allowing people to make their own choices, individual freedom, they've prospered, whereas we haven't.
We talked about the idea of choices right now, and it really comes down to if individuals are allowed to make the choices about the things they know best about, which are their lives, isn't that going to be a lot better in terms of creating the independent kind of attitude that really started this country and started this state here in Pennsylvania than those who are running off to see the Wizard of Oz, see what the wizard thinks, and are dependent upon his decisions, where he doesn't really know about, and that being the governor or any other official here, they don't know as much about your life as you do. And it comes down to a matter of trust, doesn't it?
It really does. And we say we trust the people.
Right.
And we trust people to make the best choices for themselves and their families. This notion that people will make bad choices and therefore some expert in government has to make that choice for them is ludicrous. They don't know us. They don't know the names of our kids. They don't know our circumstances within our homes. They don't know our religious beliefs. They don't know anything about us. So letting us, we the people, make those choices is so powerful. And it really, really leads to a better culture, a better economy, and a better society.
You have a motto in your campaign about from the people, for the people. it seems like the motto of Pennsylvania the last couple of years has been, what do we do to the people? And that's one of the things that people have looked at and said, choices weren't even up to me. They're up to somebody else to end my business. Your business was shuttered for a while, to end other businesses. 110,000 restaurants have gone under in this country. God knows how many here in Pennsylvania.
And so many aren't coming back, Gary.
They're not coming back, and more probably to come in the long run. All kinds of regulations have been laid down during that time. We've told schools how they're going to operate. We've told businesses how they're going to operate. We've told people how late they can stay at a bar, at a restaurant, what they can eat while they're there in order to qualify for whatever. People have had things done to them. Let's get back to the idea of what would you do as a governor right now in terms of getting those choices back in the hands of the people and out of the hands of government?
Well, we take away the mandates and arbitrary and, as I say, capricious actions that then turn vindictive and mean-spirited. I mean, look what the governor did through Josh Shapiro and others to Little Lebanon County, just down the road from here. I mean, that was awful, where if you didn't knuckle under to the edicts and mandates, you were going to be punished with having federal dollars taken away from you. That's the kind of thing that doesn't work. And bluntly, Gary, these mandates and lockdowns and shutdowns didn't make us any safer, didn't keep us any healthier. They simply didn't work. And I get back to the core that you mentioned just a moment ago, and that's letting individuals decide what's best for them and their families. People are ultimately going to act in their own best interest. That's the way we're made as people in the image of God. And I just really have a difficulty with these so-called experts that think they know better and think they're more righteous than the rest of us.
Charlie, we've had choices to make with regard to mandates and how we're going to react to that. We've had companies come down and say, you can't work here anymore, especially healthcare workers,
right,
who had done yeoman duty during this whole COVID thing, working in hospitals. And yet we go back and say, if you don't have your series of shots or whatever, you've got to leave. You've got to go. Now, that's been held up a little bit by the courts. But by the same token, this idea of being ordered around right now runs so counter to what we're about here in the state of Pennsylvania and in the country in terms of liberty and freedom. Talk about, what a Governor Charlie Gerow would do in saying, okay, where's the balance point here on the choices that you make out there in the private sector, the choice that you make as a private individual, compared to the choices that government makes for you?
Yeah, and I think, Gary, the problem with all of this stuff that went on during the pandemic was that it really boiled down to control. And people sensed that. Government wanted to control their lives, wanted to control their actions, wanted to control their choices. And people rightly believe that they can make those decisions for themselves better than some bureaucrat in Harrisburg. And so as governor, I would allow people to make as many choices as they humanly can for themselves. It's not only with respect to the pandemic, but it's tax policy. Let people keep more of their hard-earned money and make for themselves the decisions about how those hard-earned dollars are spent rather than some politician in Harrisburg. I think that, when family budgets get bigger, the state budget gets smaller, we're all going to be better off for that. When families are making more choices for themselves and bureaucrats in Harrisburg are making less for them, I think the state will flourish.
Let's talk a little bit about choices on schools. That's one of the things that came up in the debate last night, and I thought it was really interesting. A lot of people said, should your choice of education be determined by your zip code?
Right.
And every one of you just about on the panel said no.
Yeah, only one didn't.
One didn't. And so talk a little bit about, how we determine choice for people, for schools, and getting your kids to the very best schools here all over Pennsylvania.
It's a tragedy, Gary. It's an absolute tragedy when kids are locked into failing schools simply because of their zip code, where they happen to live, and where they don't have the choice that people with more money do, because people with more money can choose private schools, charter schools, etc., opportunities that don't necessarily present themselves to the less fortunate. So I've been from the very start a strong advocate of school choice. As governor, I'll take us to the next level of school choice, not only through the Education Improvement Tax Credit and some of the other programs that are already in place for school choice, but through allowing the dollars that the state funds education with to follow the student rather than the school district. And then you're going to have true competition, which always leads to a better product. You're going to have better public schools as a result of increased choice.
And people have always said to me, I'm a product of public school. My mom and dad were both public school teachers. I was a public school teacher, and you were too. So the point was, Someone often says, well, how do you get public schools better? I said, act like private schools, compete. Compete for the dollar, and I think that's a big point. You talk about taking it to the next level. Talk about what the next level looks like there in terms of education.
Well, the next level is a couple of things. First of all, it is increased funding for the Education Improvement Tax Credit, significantly increased. But it's also, as I said, allowing the dollars to follow the student, because then you will get real competition. And I'm a believer that if you had more Catholic parochial schools, evangelical Christian schools, charter schools, whether cyber or in person, homeschooling, et cetera, that the public schools are going to be better. As you just mentioned a moment ago, that competition is going to create better public schools as a result. And so that's the next model that I think we need to look at, is really allowing a full-blown competition for those education dollars and for the students that possess them.
Choices in terms of what we're doing every single day here with regard to energy. Okay, as governor, I know you've been in the energy business for a long time in terms of working with people, getting to know about it. I was down in Williamsburg, Virginia the other week, and I was getting ready to come home, and I went over to get some gas, $2.99 a gallon. I get home here, it's $3.53 a gallon. I said, thank you, Governor Corbett, for that one. He and I had an argument about that on my radio show one time. But the point is, no one's done anything to change that. And I'm thinking, is the gasoline that much better here than it is down in Williamsburg, Virginia? Or what gives? What about the choices we're making in terms of the kinds of policies with regard to energy right now when we're sitting here on a sea of energy here in Pennsylvania, and it seems like we're back to a reliance and a dependence, which is not a good thing?
No, I mean, energy independence is just one of the tremendous benefits of the natural gas here in Pennsylvania, Gary. And I have been a strong proponent, believer, promoter of the safe and responsible development of our natural gas heritage here in Pennsylvania. We've got trillions of cubic feet of natural gas right underneath Pennsylvania soil. And so to take that and use it in the best ways possible, not just for fueling manufacturing, but for the plastics that it delivers. You know, this cracker facility out in western Pennsylvania is going to create thousands of jobs, not only at the plant itself, but in all the industries that are popping up around it that are going to be manufacturing different products out of plastics and other goods because of what we're able to take out of natural gas. And so that's a tremendous opportunity and a choice we have to make in the right direction. The people that want us to shut down, literally shut down, not only coal, but natural gas, do our Commonwealth and its citizens a great disservice. If we shut down the natural gas industry, it would not only cost thousands of people their livelihood and the state its economic not only survival, but ability to really compete among the other states, but it would make us fully independent upon countries that really don't like us very much. And that's a national security issue as well.
Charlie, we have a choice to go anywhere in the country to live. It's one of the great things about being an American. Obviously, as governor, you want people to come to Pennsylvania here. We have a real drain of talent going out of here. I think you mentioned last night 48th in the country right now, leaving our state to go to places like Texas and Florida, places like Idaho, Montana, Tennessee, all kinds of different places. Why are we making the choices right now in Pennsylvania to be the 10th largest corporate tax state in the union? Why are we doing those kinds of things when we could make the choice easily to say, come here to Pennsylvania? Talk a little bit about that. If you
Well, our business taxes, Gary, are actually higher than 10.
Yeah.
I mean, overall, they're number one. Right now, I think they're 2 or 3. But
Right.
over the course of the past decade or two, they're at the top of the list. And we haven't done anything to our corporate tax structure in over a quarter of a century. Why not? And now we've got people coming to us saying, you know, make me governor, I'll do something about it. We've had plenty of opportunity to do it. We've failed to do it. And the tax structure in this state works against people coming here to create jobs, staying here. It does let our children and our brightest and best go elsewhere. And, you know, our kids are leaving for Arizona and Florida and Texas, as you correctly point out, South Carolina, and Josh Shapiro and Tom Wolf are packing their bags for them. Right. We've got to make Pennsylvania a place where job creators want to come, where our kids want to stay, and where, as a result, Pennsylvania grows and thrives. And we've got an opportunity to do that now if we make the right choices.
And from the final standpoint here on choices, you know, we look right now at the choices that are being made for us, the choices that we want to make for ourselves. and we come back to where we started. I worry that government, not of the people, but done to the people, is leading to a real dependence kind of situation. And maybe that's where people want it to go, and if they do, shame on them. But the idea is that we need to start to gear ourselves again back up for this independence. We're not going to beat COVID, for example. We're going to live with COVID over a long period of time. Right. We're not ever going to be bereft of problems here in this state. We're always going to have them. But the idea of getting back to trusting the people seems to be where we want to go. Can we get our representatives to trust us again to do the right things? That's the big question here.
That's what we as voters have to demand.
Yeah.
Representatives that trust the people, because this really is a government of the people, and our campaign really is formed around from the people. I came from the people, not a professional politician, not some fancy Dan guy, small business owner, somebody that has worked, with a lot of dirt underneath my fingernails through the years, and understands what the people want, and am willing to listen. I've given out my personal cell phone number across the state. I did again last night on the debate stage, Gary. And for those that want it right now, it's 877-8194 in the 717 area code, 717-877-8194. I want to listen. I want to hear what people have to say. I want to hear their ideas, because I don't believe that every good idea exists under the Capitol Dome up the street.
And you've made the choice to put your number out there so people can make the choice to call you. And you really can call him, and you really will talk to Charlie. That is his personal cell phone number. I can tell you from experience, because I've talked to him over the years a few times. Ladies and gentlemen, what are the things that really matter? We're talking about them today. And one of the things that really matters is getting back to us making the choices again. All of us. I think we all want that. We all want freedom. We all want liberty. Charlie, thanks so much for taking the time.
Great to be with you, Gary. Love it.
And we'll look forward to our next time when we talk about what really matters right here.
Businessman, conservative, patriot, Charlie Gerow for governor.